As we bid a fond farewell to June, I bid a fond hello to you, dear listeners. This is Doc Ito, coming back after last week's, fascinating diversion, courtesy of my good buddy Cal 1003. I think Clark's timing might have been a little premature. But we are right on time for episode 35 of the Civ Battle Royale Season 3, The Baron and the Overflowed. Some nations build up, some nations don't. There's a lot to get through, and this is just one stepping stone towards the end. Ohayo gozaimasu. I can say that because I've started writing this in the morning. To all you guys, gals, and non-binary pals, I'm back once again to narrate this part of CBRX3. I'm Orange, aka Orange Chrissy, aka the person who did Part 5, aka the person who makes the Civ Ball comics, aka Mohave supporter extraordinaire. Alas, I did not sneak my way into the dev team yet, as I suggested last time, but don't worry, I still have plans. Anyways, prepare yourselves to be subject to my relentless messy train of thought and shit humor because, oh boy, this will be a doozy. I say before I've read any of the part, and I don't read ahead as I write it. Vaguely related, yeah, I should probably really try and find a therapist again. Also, join the Discord. It's linked on the site in the upper right. I just love the tile-accurate map. It feels so nice to look at. Blessed be Nathan Massey and their maps. Wow, Orange, you really did good on this comic that you haven't drawn yet as of writing this slide. Great work. Love the idea of doing a comic about the Wiradjuri troops in Arapaho. Anyways, note to self for later, draw a comic about the Wiradjuri troops in Arapaho. It's Pride Month, and you know what that means. Lax is trans, give her money or else, forfeit all possessions to Lax. Or give me money, I'm also queer AF, and could use the money. Yes, I'm putting Kokong's slide here because gay. I could put the Inca who snagged first, finally, but no. I went this about the Yang herself. She was a lesbian and also had some genderqueer stuff going on. There was a recent book released about her, which is pretty cool. I still need to read it. We start off this part with a nice shot of the Angolan invasion of the Normans going just swimmingly for the Angolans. Savimbi takes Taranto and Catania and has units outside of Benevento. Gonna be honest, the Normans have a good chance of dying this part. But they did retake Melfi from Yugoslavia, so that's something. We pan upwards a bit with another turn, and the Normans have retaken their capital. As someone really rooting for Yugoslavia right now, this is very not good. If someone reading is a Norman fan, then I guess good for you. Congrats. Hope you're happy. The Arapaho continue their march into the Cree, taking Mikiseu and retaking Teguashti. Uashat in the east somehow has not taken damage yet, and the Cree's navy is rapidly thinning. Would be really awful for them if a certain naval power invaded them right now. Come on, Mohave. Fucking attack already. What the fuck you doing? Gusmao finally decides to put Indonesia out of their misery and finish what was started nearly 300 turns ago. Medan is immediately brought to black and, yeah, I don't fancy Indonesia lasting longer than a few turns. Nukes are continuing to fall down between these two eternal rivals, wiping out a fair few troops. But is it enough to stop the fighting altogether? No. Cree retakes Teguashti and pushes on Wabaska. Uashat falls to level and will soon fall. Mohave still hasn't joined the war. Did you know that Fallout Boy has a space between the fall and the out? I sure didn't. Found out when I went to check if it was Fallout Boy or Fallout Boy. Was it always like this? They seem to be named a character that appeared in The Simpsons one episode, but that character looks to be spelled Fallout Boy. Why? Who did this? Why isn't the band's name spelled Fallout Boy? I need answers. The Normans tap out of their conflict with Yugoslavia just after Yugoslavia retakes the Norman capital. Sadly, they didn't also get Melfi, but hey, we take what we can get. Now Guiscard can focus all his troops against Angola. Benevento is already looking a bit safer, but Palermo is down in the red, soon to be taken. But Guiscard does have some tanks of his own to retake it if that happens. Yes, it has been one turn since TL declared war, and already Medan has fallen, and both Chittagong and San Juan del Monte are down to black, with many units surrounding them. Next shot will be the eulogy. Palermo falls, but as I said, the Normans have a lot of troops still around it, so they can take it back. Benevento still isn't being attacked for some reason. I really don't know why. Like, they have multiple rocket artillery around the city, and the big robot thing that I don't know the name of and will ask Koyot for later if I need it. With this, Indonesia is out in 28th. A solid showing, made it to the top half, was a strong competitor for a bit, even reaching 11th in the rankings at 2 points. But it was not meant to be. Timor-Leste got the upper hand and absolutely devastated Suharto, told him, "Know your place, bitch," and put Indonesia firmly out of the running. One down, I wonder how many more. The Collective Civilians of Indonesia, or CCI, hold an emergency meeting after the last city falls. The collective, made up of merchants, admirals, fishermen, workers, and other civilians, discuss what to do now that their country is gone. Some propose they join Timor-Leste. Others say they want to escape to Afghanistan or Bengal. The stressed times even cause a few fights to break out. One mother, a member of Settler Group 02, proclaims that the only thing she knows is that she will keep her children safe no matter what. They're the only words that get unanimous support throughout the meeting. Arapaho finally takes Uashat with an immense amount of robot mech units, but Poundmaker gathers together quite the counterforce and prepares a stronger defense of Tiguashti, though Matimekosh looks to fall eminently. If the Cree can get enough naval units to take Wabaska, then it'll be tough for Arapaho to retake it, but Arapaho has a lot of planes. Mohave still hasn't joined the war. There's approximately 0 Arapaho units on the border. Now, there aren't many Mohave units either, but there are more, so if these two go to war, it will be Mohave's to fuck up the start of. Anyways, Mohave still hasn't joined the war. Benevento finally falls, but what's that? It's Guiscard from behind with a steel tank! He snuck a tank into Durrano and has secured Palermo! A big stumble for the Angolan offense in this Royal Rumble! Do the Normans have what it takes to push the Angolans back and keep their empire? Find out next time! A few lone Wiradjuri men stand on the barren snow of the small Antarctic land. With them, a lone Massagette musketman sits, safe, protected. The Wiradjuri don't know why they were given this task. They wanted to try and keep fighting the Inca, but instead, they got put here, tasked with defending this icy shithole and the single Central Asian gunman. One officer of the artillery battalion, speaking with a field gun officer, is caught remarking, "Did they send us here to die? They didn't give us the means to even start up a settlement. Damned Windradine. I've got half a mind just to shoot the Massagettean next time he's in range. Maybe we can get some more fish to ourselves." Overall, a pretty cheery place. Also, I did check. This isn't the sub's hiding spot. This is a separate, unsettled Antarctic piece of land. Wabaska regains some health, but gets further surrounded by Kree ships. Though, to be fair, 3 of those are subs, and 2 are carriers, so not really the most effective for a naval invasion. The Kree are really running out of naval units now, as I count only 2 ships in this image that can actually do something, but at least Arapaho isn't building any more. Also, the Arapaho take Matemakosh, but lose quite a few mechs. Mohave still hasn't joined the war. Angolan nukes fly high as they bomb the shit out of Toronto and Palermo, and the Normans look to have nuked Catania in return. Now, the Normans are really running out of units, and the Angolans still have another wave right behind them. Will they end at the coast, or will they go even further into Europe? We finally find out why Bengal hasn't been building up that many troops. They've been saving this space for the Han drone army. Honestly, this is one of the first armies that has carpeted enough to then go on to carpet another Civ's empire. So they just have this mega army, apparently. Would love to get a shot of their empire. But I think it's important to note that, at least based on last part's stats, which is only 9 turns old, Han is losing 5k gold a turn. They're absolutely churning out units enough to fill up Bengal's land, despite being so in the hole. The fuck is Wu doing with his economy? Angola has taken out the fleet around Benevento and more or less secured it. The army slightly pushes forward toward Palermo, but the Normans are getting a bit more of a defensive force situated. Will it be enough? Probably not. Arapaho gathers their army for another push and sends so many planes at the Kree army. So many red numbers here, indicating units and cities that are being bombed. I count 92 Arapaho air units here. I wonder how many are nukes. Kayapo builds the Bionic Tower, and not in their capital this time. The Bionic Tower gives +2 Great Scientist points, and makes it so that specialists in cities consume half the amount of food and produce half the amount of unhappiness. This is a really, really strong wonder, but also, well, Mao, Kayapo, you aren't going to save yourself with this. Also, no, I never did play with Bionicles, so the title here is just a random quote I found online that I hope has some significance or something. Arapaho manages to somehow snag Big Stone without any ships. Quite impressive. They are also slowly pushing back the Kree army and bombing everything to shit. Mohave still hasn't joined the war. We get a nice zoomed-in shot of the absolute devastation nukes have brought to the tundra wastes of Alaska. Not only are the cities taking big damage from them, but the units will take a lot of damage, both in getting destroyed by the nukes and the fallout chipping them down. The people here are suffering immensely from the war, but war never ends. Good job on carpeting up your lands, Anglo-Dutch. Just one minor issue. These are Greenlandish troops, not Anglo-Dutch. Look, I'm a big supporter of the Anglo-Dutch. I really love Orange, as should be obvious. But right now, it's kind of feeling like the way to stop Brandenburg would be for Greenland to take over AD, and not the other way around. Though AD does have a big tech advantage. Either way, one of these two needs to take over the other to really stand a chance against Brandenburg. It's not quite a full-on shot of Han, but it does show their gigantic army and how it absolutely dwarfs the Kokang army and the Mohave army. Now, the Han army is also very nice in having a mix of drone UAVs and that modern armor. Whoever they attack next is gonna be in for some pain. At least until the completely broken Han economy, which is stalling their tech completely, sets them even further behind than they already are. An Incan seaman stands on the bow of their cyber ship, looking out on the empty waters near Inti Matana and Taumarunui. The serene waters of the Pacific have called to them all their life. Got a bit lucky in being drafted for the fleet during the Kayapo War, but late enough not to be sent east. Saved from the action, they're content to live their dream at sea, enjoying the slow rocking of the ship, reveling in the banter among crewmates. The threat from the west is nearly non-existent, with only a few Timor-Leste ships nearby. It's as good as a life can be. Side note, yes, the city in the mod is spelled wrong. Google put the red squiggle underneath, so I looked it up, and the mod has it wrong. We get a nice shot of the triple point between Kayapo, the Inca, and the Muisca. All of them have a smattering of units, but not much. One thing to note, however, is that Kayapo has like 10 techs on the Inca, who have almost 20 on the Muisca. But Kayapo doesn't really have the strength to make a super army themselves, so a joint attack would be quite devastating, especially after the previous one. We got a nice border here between Turkey and Afghanistan. Neither side has many troops. A stalemate of nothingness. That is all. Palermo and Catania swap hands as Capua falls to the red and another attack is launched at Benevento. The Normans are doing quite well in keeping Angola from getting too far in their offensive. Having made peace with Yugoslavia really helped them refocus themselves in just one direction. Also, Yugoslavia is building up a nice little army again. Maybe they can attack a second time. Spice things up. Greenland is not only carpeting the Anglo-Dutch Isles, but also the Muisca lands across the Atlantic. Just what will Agede do with all these units? Nothing? Probably. Maybe he can launch an attack from foreign territory and do something crazy. The Arapaho surge ahead with their robot mechs and take Mani Utenam, while Mimkumlis drops to red. Things really ain't looking good for the Cree here, but they still have quite a number of cities left. It's a long, slow death. Mohave still hasn't joined the war. Governments! The main one to look at here is the Celestial Empire of Kayapo, which has the Mandate of Heaven. That's a wild government to have, and I'm pretty sure quite special. No idea what bonuses it might give. Either way, it is quite the government. Don't think anyone else will be able to claim anything nearly as fancy. Seems that's it for the governments, as instead we take a look at the Kayapo having giant death robots. Now, I'm not entirely sure because I may not have checked the most clearly, but I'm pretty sure this is the first giant death robot build so far. Super strong, they are a great way to spend uranium. That's not just nuking others into oblivion. Greenlandish troops have even found their way into Yemen in Arabia. The troops are sweltering beyond belief. Used to the freezing cold of the Arctic, they are now forced to suffer through the highs of the desert in July. Truly awful conditions for the sprawling Greenland army. Also, I totally missed the Greenland-Brandenburg versus Chad war until I went to the next slide and saw it, so now I'm back. The Greenlandish troops in Yemen have a second objective besides their first objective of survive. Survive, but against another army. They won't be able to do anything here, but boy would it be funny if they did. We get our first great person highlight of the part with Gustav Holst, famed Incan orchestral musician. Part of the Incan cultural enrichment movement, he created pieces dedicated to the planets of the solar system. OTL, he was an English composer, 1874 to 1934, whose most famous work, The Planets, was composed throughout 1913 to 1916. Wikipedia has the quote, Holst's influence is lasting in the work of all of us who value directness and sincerity, and who view music not so much a secret preserve for the leisured few, as a vital part of everyday life. The Arapaho war machine marches ever forward, taking control of Mimcumlis from the sea again without a navy. Maniutenam stays firmly in their hands, and soon all the nearby units will be cleared out. The people cry out for their families amidst the bombs and bullets. You will have to reckon with yourself, pretty nose, and everything that you've done. Mohave still hasn't joined the war. In the Bengal city of Darbhanga, a rapper has risen to high prominence. Lauryn Hill's hip-hop beats and neo-soul music has grabbed the city's attention, and even that of some of the visiting Han drones. OTL, Lauryn Hill is an American rapper born in 1975 who is regarded as one of the greatest rappers of all time, and her solo album The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill in 1998 is one of the best-selling albums of all time. She's often credited as the artist who popularized blending rap with melodic singing in the same song, also known as melodic rap. Makes sense. Peace reigns, and it only cost 2 cities being nuked off the map, and the Kree being reduced to a single Arctic shithole. Though they do have a settler on Hokkaido that can resettle one of the lost cities, but whew, the Kree are fully out of the running, and just an errant declaration from the Gokturks away from succumbing to the world and joining the sub. Massive win for Arapaho, though, who now have most of the continent on lockdown, and have almost fully edged Mohave out of potential future gains in North America. Mohave still hasn't joined the war. Ataturk builds the Shimizu Megacity Pyramid in Izmir, which grants plus 20 gold, science and production, plus 3 great engineer points, eliminates building maintenance in the city it was built in, and causes auto plants and drone hives to produce plus 2 happiness. Overall, not the greatest wonder. The stat sheet has it ranked to 2. It's something, at least. The feud has been going on for years. Ochali writing to the State Settlement Council, the State Settlement Council returning her emails without actually responding to the contents, Ochali writing more emails to the State Settlement Council, the State Settlement Council saying something about 3 tiles and that there wasn't anything they could do. Ochali creating a draft describing the unused space and how her group would build up a town there, the State Settlement Council saying they will look into it, and not getting back to her. It was a very tiring affair, the stress taking a toll on Ochali's health. But she stayed passionate about it, her settler organization setting up a technically illegal settlement in the empty space right in the middle of the quad cities of Luanda, Cabinda, Ambriz, and Lubango, on the grassland and jungle that only had a small trading post there. Ochale had been speaking out about the Angolan state's egregious lack of space usage and how they fail to give people the necessary homes to live in while letting so much land go empty. Some say it's for environmental reasons. Others dispute that and say it's for officials' private lands. Either way, the lands run empty and people need homes, and some are willing to fight for that. Anyways, Angola's lands are missing a whole lot of military and also is somehow missing improvements on many tiles. Come on, Savimbi. Whoa! The Kree double their city count in 5 turns! Insane! The Kree do in fact resettle their destroyed settlement in Alaska by settling a very Kree city. If you can't tell, it's very Kree. Mohave still hasn't joined the war. We got, right here, the most important war declaration of the part. Isabella, after receiving a large amount of hate mail from one Idris Deby, who really disliked how she had survived in the snow, decides enough is enough and declares war on Chad. Now, it's really just a formal declaration. Isabella can't do shit from where she is, but she's banking on the international community to side with her. Though, whether the other civs will see her plea as a just fight against a bully, or the mad ramblings of the Ice Queen, who's to say? The international community hears Isabella's pleas and two civs join in, the Muisca and Uganda, neither of which is a major player by any means, but it's the winds of change, and they seem to be blowing favorably for Isabella. So it's been going on a bit in the background, but there haven't actually been many updates. You may have noticed that there was a 9-turn jump between Acre City and Antarctic Rise Up, and back on this front, not much has changed. The Normans have been able to build up more of a navy and army now that Yugoslavia is out of the war, and have been able to secure their coastal holdings while flipping Taranto and Catania. In addition, Han units are beginning to spread across the Norman lands, keeping Benevento safe, but also limiting the Normans' ability to move their own troops. Uganda's Idi Amin has a great announcement to make. After much development, they have finally reached the modern era, taking on this brave new technological frontier. Ignore that everyone else is so much further ahead. Uganda is literally 10 plus techs behind, second to last. At the end of the last part, Indonesia was second at 72 techs, a full 11 ahead of Uganda's 61. Lithuania was third with 76, so that's 15 techs ahead. Seriously, Uganda is so far behind, especially for a civ that hasn't really been attacked much at all. Along with the announcement of entering the modern era, Idi Amin also announces the beginnings of a new state policy, liberalism, claiming that the free markets and capitalist structure will do the country much good in continuing to modernize the place and giving people what they need to live productive and good lives. Something liberalism doesn't work, I'm too anarchist for this, and don't want to go into a full diatribe about how it won't help such a small country that is likely heavily based on imports and a colonized structure from Angola and Yemen's imperialism. Idi Amin thinks it'll work, and really, that's all that matters. I don't really know what is meant to be shown here, and I can't think of a fun lore thing to write immediately, so I'll just say that Kaipo looks like they have a more filled-in land, but it's really just more civilian units and not actual army units. Ah, there it is. A very, very nice view of Han's empire and their utterly terrifying army. So many drones. Every tile filled to the brim with drone UAVs and some tanks. Every new unit just being pushed out to other civs' lands. This is the extreme might of the morally and very much financially bankrupt. They're literally just killing their scientific advancement with this. But hey, go off, I guess. So this is quite interesting. Tuva, like Han, has an immense carpet that is filled with drone UAVs. At the end of the last part, and it's been about 50 turns since then, whew, Tuva had 483,000 military strength compared to Han's 1,161,000, and 42 cities compared to Han's 26. So more land and less army at the start. They also were negative 1.5 thousand gold per turn in the whole, and at 0 treasury, dropping their science down to 1.2 thousand. Han is already stuck at 0, as has been mentioned previously. What I mean all this to say is, I don't know how big Tuva's army right now is, but it very well may be a whole lot bigger than Han's, due to the greater land area of Tuva, and this is probably putting them at 0 science like the Han as well. Opposite the Tuvan hordes of drones is Turkey, who has basically no army, but also they are 27 techs ahead, 85 versus 112, though the max is 122, and have nearly 3 times the production, 9.1 thousand versus 3.5 thousand. Though that, of course, is 50 turns out of date. Either way, if these two come to blows, it'll be a complete bloodbath no matter what. Mohave still hasn't. Mohave still war joined the Mohave joined the joined war. Mohave still Mohave hasn't the joined Mohave still war. Mohave hasn't joined the still Mohave the war joined still the Mohave joined the war still had the war joined. It seems Nemekwene's war declaration really was just a performative action, as he quickly makes peace. Though quick is a misleading statement. It's been only 8 slides, but it's been 24 turns. For now, the Chadians still stand strong, much to the despair of the Snow Kingdom. Ataturk builds the Ultima Tower in Istanbul, granting +10 happiness, +2 great engineer points, and +2 citizens in every city. A pretty good wonder all around. Very nice to get that population buff. Also, yes, this is an attempt at a Danganronpa reference. I haven't played the games, I don't know how to make it better. On the same turn, Ataturk builds the Buenos Aires Forum in Nimrud. Why he decided to name it after a Rio de la Plata city across the cylinder instead of after the city it was built in, or another Turkish city. Maybe Ataturk wanted to honor the victims in the Incan Kayapo War, or maybe the Kayapo RDLP War. Who knows? Anyways, the Buenos Aires Forum grants +2 Great Scientist points, increases Golden Age length by 50%, and triggers one, and grants Golden Age points equal to the number of citizens in the city it was built each turn. Also, so I'm using the stat sheet to check what the wonders do, and it says Turkey already built the Buenos Aires Forum and Ankara back on turn 620? Did they somehow manage to build both? Okay, so I went back to check the previous part. It seems Turkey built the Citadel Station on turn 620, not the Buenos Aires Forum. Also, the previous narrator, this is a call-out post for Emerald, he pissed on my fucking wife, said it was not totally groundbreaking, just kinda neat, while the stat sheet has it rated as a 9 out of 10, granting +2 science and gold from scientist specialists and +2 production and gold from engineer specialists, which is, yeah, pretty good. Well, I don't like this, but let's look at the situation. The Muisca are well behind Kayapo in techs, and Kayapo does have quite the army around, but 2 things. Mali beat Kayapo while they had a similar tech disparity, and Kayapo is missing a whole lot of planes. They have 10 up in Tiwanaku, and the previous pick of Kayapo that showed more didn't show any more to the south, but the Muisca have 28 directly on the front, so if they can whittle down these initial troops while continuing to build their own army and navy, they will probably be okay. If another civ joins in against Kayapo, then it'd basically be game, set, and match. Please do well, Muisca. Sad face. Catania flips back to Angola, but the Normans managed to sneak into Luena. The previous mini-maps show they held Taranto for a bit, then got pushed back to Palermo before retaking Palermo and pushing to Luena. And the Han wave spreads. Alright, so for actual discussion on the Kayapo-Muisca War, it has, sadly, not gone the way I wanted. Kayapo has taken Bau and Iraka, and has a strong force pushing towards Duitama. The Muisca look like they focused all their energy on bombing Gorotiri and Kokraimoro instead of thinning out the enemy army. Also, the Kayapo have a whole bunch of Nexai, which are very strong and are just wiping the outdated Muisca units. Mohave still hasn't joined the war? Giscard has mastered the greatest defensive strategy one can have, getting a third civ to do it for him. The Normans really are having an easier time with their counterattacks when the moment they take a city, it starts to get surrounded by Han peacekeepers. Angola is just really getting stuck here, and they are struggling to make advances while the Normans are getting a lot more time to rebuild troops. This is Kabenti Zikrin with KCNN, and we have an extremely breaking report today. Video appeared 10 minutes ago of Komoro being nuked by the unholy, wicked Muisca. Given the positioning of the nuclear strike in the Northeast District, early estimates are putting the physical death count at anywhere from 20 million to 45 million. Based on the digital district outages of at least 5 digital self-servers have been destroyed or put offline by the bomb, killing a further 20 to 50 million. His Highness Mektuktire's status has yet to be confirmed, though it is believed that he was in the Southwest District at the time, far enough away from the blast to be safe. Bless his soul. This is clearly a horrific act of terror meant to try and kill our faultless leader and murder millions of innocent men, women, and children, and as revenge for the liberation of Bau and Iraka, cities that have long had oppressed their Kayapo citizens. We will stand strong against this evil, and the Muiscan perpetrators will be held accountable to the fullest extent possible. The metal sensation Metallica has volunteered in the war, joining the front lines after having achieved idol status a few years prior. They bring their music to the front line at Duitama and invigorate the Nexai and mechs involved in the attacks. Their metal beats pumping everyone up and really making everyone even more into the war. Also, I think Bau flipped, though it wasn't on the minimap, but they lost 7 pops, so I presume so, though they could have been nuked. And a lot of units have been cleared out with the nukes and bombing, especially all the civilian units. Maybe that news report had a hint of truth to it. Still propaganda, though. Just before the city of Duitama falls, peace comes out on top. Perhaps the nuking of Komoro, Gorotiri, and Kokraimoro forced Kayapo's hand. Either way, this is a weird stop for Kayapo. They have such an upper hand, and they were only able to get away with 2 cities. Like, they could have gotten so much more. But this is just further proof of how much Kayapo sucks at war, despite what some would say. They have a massive tech lead, huge production lead, a solid enough buildup of units, and an enemy without much of an army. And they still only took 2 cities, waiting for them to be rolled over and destroyed. The Normans make their greatest push so far, retaking Taranto and Catania and preparing the lands for Han units. Luena has somehow stayed quite safe, and Benevento is completely healed up. Now, Angola does still have the units around Taranto and Catania to retake it. The Han units aren't taking up that space quite yet. But will they be able to take and keep the cities? Honestly, it's feeling less and less likely. When this episode started, I thought the Normans were on their way to being completely knocked out, but now they're knocking back, and are probably going to hold the line from the start of the episode, or at least close enough. End of last part, they had down to Split, but start of this episode showed Angola already owning Split, and Luena while taking Taranto and Catania. In response to the nuking of the Kayapo cities, Raoni has commissioned the Sky City, a safe haven in the skies where any potential nuclear threat can be spotted and stopped before it gets near. A city so high it stands above where the nuclear missiles fly. The city of the heavens, the city of the stars. The Sky City grants +2 great engineer points, a free vertical farm in the city it's built in, and vertical farms give an extra +4 food, +4 gold, and +2 happiness. Pretty meh wonder. Pretty Nose once more shows herself to be the active civ of North America, this time declaring war on Greenland. Now, there is a small issue here, mainly the American cities in the way, but Arapaho should have enough power, tech, and other shit to handily win, though whether they get any cities out of the war is another question. Maybe this could be good content for next week's comic, or, well, the comic for this part, so I guess this week when you're all reading this, but saying this week's comic sounds weird when I still haven't done this week's comic and it's like 9 p.m. this Monday night. Turkey is really pushing out wonders as they nab the floating islands in the coastal city of Bursa. The floating islands grant +3 great scientist points, +3 culture, and +3 gold to nearby ocean tiles, and cause atolls to produce an additional +2 culture, +2 gold, +1 food, and +1 production. Julianhab quickly falls to the large Arapaho navy that was sitting right outside the city, and there was no way for Greenland to defend it, since America citadelled all the land provinces. However, now there's just a 2-tile gap through the north to get through to the Greenland core, and it's currently being blocked by 2 Brandenburg ships. Also, Greenland is sending paratroopers into Arapaho lands in a very futile effort to try and not get utterly wrecked. We move a bit south to see the other issue with this war declaration, that being that Montpellier is cut off from the rest of Arapaho's land. So Greenland, despite having a much weaker and less advanced army, is able to push right up and start knocking heavily on those city walls. Let's see if they'll actually be able to take the city. Though I will say, Montpellier for Julianhab is a really good trade for Hans. On this episode of Mobile Suit Gundam, Witch from Africa, the huge number of Angolan mechs have broken through the line at Luena and Catania, forcing out the Normans and their Han peacekeeping allies. The Han peacekeepers and Norman subs are having the unintended consequence of preventing the Normans from being able to properly retake cities. But the fight isn't over yet. Angolan mechs move towards Toronto, seeing if they can make their way through the drone fleet. But even more than that, will our heroines be able to cross the Sahara and meet each other in the midst of the war? Find out next time. Apparently, Chad and Tuva were at war, and a lone Tuvan drone UAV sits just east of Fada as a remembrance of the fight. One painter, Edgar Degas, decides to take the inspiration of peace and start painting people's lives newly free of war, ignoring that Tuva did not actually pose a threat nor send units in any real capacity. His paintings attract many for his innovative style. OTL Edgar Degas was a French Impressionist painter, most known for his painting of dancers, especially those ones with all the girls in tutus. Apparently, he was also quite anti-Semitic, especially after the Dreyfus affair. Like, come on, dude. Why you gotta be such a dick to Jewish people? One friend even said this about him, quote, "What a creature he was, that Degas. All his friends had to leave him. I was one of the last to go, but even I couldn't stay till the end." End quote. Like, bruh, feels like an old version of Graham Lynham, getting so absorbed in bigotry that everyone leaves him to live out the rest of his sad, little pathetic life in loneliness. I stand corrected. The Brandenburg ships just moved out of the way and let Arapaho waltz right in to take the capital of Godhab. Montpellier still hasn't been taken either, so, oh boy, this feels like Greenland is about to very quickly learn what superior firepower really means. Hans Agede flees the capital to the safest location he can get to, Oviedo. Far removed from the Arapaho invasion, he has plenty of protection in a small but packed navy and a large army in foreign soil. Now I wonder what'll happen if the Anglo-Dutch join in and all those units get kicked out. I laugh at how devoid of Brandenburger units Brandenburg is. And yes, Brandenburger is apparently the adjective, somehow. Instead, letting the lands be filled with a mix of Tuvan drone spam and Greenlandic paratroopers. All these Greenlandic units out here in Scandinavia, and in the Anglo-Dutch Isles, definitely aren't going to be much help against Arapaho, though. Maybe they can get away with something like a surprise suicide attack against Brandenburg with Tuva's help. Buman Kagan sits at his desk in Kengu Tarman and does nothing. He does nothing. He is just sitting around doing nothing. Could attack Kree, or could just continue sitting at his desk. It's a nice desk, made of nice Siberian larch. It's quite pretty, this desk. Very nice. What were you talking about again? You knew I wouldn't get all the way to the end of a part without making the electric boogaloo joke. And no, we are not acknowledging the fact that I didn't have a slide title named African Mechs to have this be a sequel to. Anyways, as we can see from the top, it seems Angola has managed to retake Taranto and still holds Catania, while Norman units sit around between Taranto and Luena. Nearby, Mali sits with a nice carpet and some very nice Angolan cities, with very few defense forces that would be just lovely to yoink. Will they do it? Probably not. Mali's been a disappointing wreck this entire Royale. Only time I thought they were cool was when Kaipo attacked them and they took Recife. We get a quick shot over at the African colonies of Timor-Leste, with about the same number of troops around as the entire southern portion of Angola. Still gotta wait and see if anything will happen there. Among the southern lands, more activists have sprouted up following Ochali's movement 30 years prior, claiming the private empty land of the south for their own in order to expand the housing space of the less fortunate. The Angolan government continues to refuse their petitions and not acknowledge their settlements. It's become a network of small, poor towns pushing back against the state and facing shockingly little resistance, but unable to achieve their goals because the only response the state gives is an ardent refusal to acknowledge what is going on. We get a nice shot of Incan Patagonia, where most of the cities have had some nice growth happen in the years since the Great War. Also, Incan power armor infantry, I think the first one spotted, so props to them for getting them before either Kaipo or Turkey. I have no idea how the stats compare between stuff like them, the Nexi, or other units, so let's just hope they are pretty good, and give them a nice thumbs up. Good job, Tupac. We end this part on a shot of the former battleground of the Kaipo-Muisca War, Kaipo returning to being devoid of units. Well, it's been a pleasure to narrate this part for my second narration of CBRX3. I hope you all enjoyed my stream of conscious and weird rambling. It's been a long part, 89 turns. We've seen carpets grow and wars fought, but not actually that much action, to be honest. Only one civ died, despite the length, and really only a few civs got any focus. So I hope I was able to make this enjoyable. I don't know if I was able to write as many lore bits as I wanted to, but oh well, it is what it is. Anyways, don't trust the words of this mad girl and you're all really gay. I don't make the rules. Happy Pride all! Mohave still hasn't joined the war. And on that oddly peaceful note, this is Doc Ito wishing good night and a happy 4th of July. If you don't celebrate America's Independence Day, well, Have a good day next Tuesday in any event.